my name is Becky, and I'm part of a pretty large group of people who have been volunteering with Oak Tree Ministries from the early days, and that says a lot about Oak Tree, doesn't it? And I want to talk to you about some of the training that we have received as volunteers at Oak Tree and the impact it's had on my life and on the children I get to work with, and one little girl in particular I will use as an example, and I will call her Emily. Now, Emily has not grown up in my world. My world is the American suburbs, where most people are white, most people own homes, most people own cars, most people go to college and have jobs with benefits, and even though life is also hard out here, because we live in a broken world and there's sin and depravity and despair and addiction and suicide and divorce and pain, it's very different for Emily. Emily still lives in a broken world, but she doesn't have all those soft, cushy privileges and advantages that I just enumerated, that I grew up with. And so in her community, for generations, they have experienced kinds of trauma that I have not encountered. She lives in a world I do not understand. And that trauma has resulted in very specific behaviors for her and for her peers. And Oak Tree has always been super good at training us about the cross-cultural aspects and the differences that in their life, in this community's lifestyle, that we do not understand, and that all we can bring is the gospel and an open heart and a willing mind to learn from these beautiful people. And so learning about their trauma is a big deal. But when we first met Emily, who comes from a home where she is loved, her parents sign her up for every advantage that she can be signed up for. She was able to join our reading club. There was a space available for her. So we were going to have access to her for 6 hours a week, 3 hours twice a week. And she walked through the first door, and we were just prepared to love this beautiful child with these bright, sparkling eyes, and instantly learned that she was not going to be receptive to our love, no matter how well-meaning it was. She was upside down girl. If you've ever seen the old movie The Miracle Worker about the young Helen Keller, that's what we were working with sweet Emily. If it was time to sit, she was going to run. If it was time to run, she was going to break something, which was mostly what she did. She broke things and stole things and threw things. She was nonverbal. The only sound she made was this ear-splitting, horrible screech that she did with a big smile on her face at random intervals throughout the day. And if you were assigned to be her buddy for the day, you knew you were going to have a day of disappointment and despair, because there was going to be no progress. There was nothing going to be accomplished. She was uncommunicative. You couldn't reach her. There was no reaching her. And then the Lord brought this training into our lives called trauma-informed practices. And what that says is, you see this bad behavior in this child. You have to look underneath that behavior for the trauma that's talking to you. These children and adults, their behavior is a coping mechanism that they have discovered to keep them safe in an often unsafe and unpredictable environment. And so we changed. We got this training and we changed. We completely changed our approach to Emily and the other children. And within a couple of weeks, we saw a change. I remember the day I had my first conversation with Emily, and it was like 5 sentences. I was crying and running to all the other volunteers saying, "We had a conversation." The next thing we know, she is the manicurist for all of Reading Club. The next thing we know, she is the teacher's assistant. She became leader girl from upside down girl. She became the child you could count on to go help other children and to go get supplies. And as a matter of fact, for our big program we run on Sundays, she became the little girl who sits and helps with registration. And did I say she was 6? She was 6 when we got her. It was a life-changing experience for us and for her. And it was only with 6 hours a week with adults who had learned how much we had to learn, and that her trauma was speaking, not the child. The child wasn't speaking. So if you're interested in any of that training, just contact Raquel, because there's endless resources. If you're interested in coming along beside us and being trained to commit to these children on a regular basis, we would love to have you. Thanks for your time. I hope to see you in the village.